That is, they will have internet-based access to all recorded and then digitized human knowledge, augmented by powerful search engines, open source software, learning resources, open learning philosophies, open universities like the British Open University, collaborative developed tools, think Wikipedia 2.0, 3.0, Web 3.0, and beyond. And ubiquitous information and communications technology. All of this on a rapidly evolving scaffolding of cyber infrastructure, increasing in power 100 to 1,000-fold every decade. What is that? I don't know. I mean, that's something I throw at you folks, and I've thrown it at our social scientists. This is not really a university of the world of the 21st century. It's a new civilization. It's a civilization in which people are empowered with universal access to knowledge, to learning tools, to interacting together. No longer constrained by space or time or monopoly or what does copyright and patent mean in this world? Will Mickey Mouse continue to hold ransom on our copyright policies in this country? I don't know, but I think what you're going to see is some kind of spontaneous emergence of new kinds of social institutions. What are the implications for the existing institutions, universities, corporations, nation states? I don't know. That's an interesting question. But interestingly enough, that's going to be the world you're going to graduate into, you're going to work in, and you're going to live in. So I think it's something to think about as you think about the topic of globalization. So that's kind of what's happening today, why it's happening, and from the lunatic fringe, several ideas on what may be happening tomorrow. And maybe the best thing I can do right now is kind of open it up for discussion. See if you have questions, ideas, things you want to talk about. The floor is yours.
We're going to take a question first from one of our off-campus students. And the question is, what could be done to restore engineering to a career of prestige in the United States? Another student commented that there's a lot of debate on this. Most recently, a lengthy article in a civil engineering magazine. He saw that someone suggested that they could create a 3-year postgraduate degree program similar to what they do with the law degree. So what are your thoughts on these types of strategies and others?
A century ago, almost exactly, medicine was facing the same kind of challenge engineering is today. At that time, to become a doctor, all you needed was to have gone to high school. You didn't need a high school degree. Secondary, elementary education was about it. It took a year's worth of lectures from a for-profit medical school. There were 155 in the country. And then you paid a few bucks for a license and you started practicing medicine. Well, a lot of people thought that, with the changing healthcare needs, the scientific foundation that was beginning to evolve for anatomy, physiology, and so forth, that just wasn't good enough. The Carnegie Foundation hired an educator, not a physician, but an educator by the name of Abraham Flexner, to visit all 155 medical schools and then write a report on what should be done. It turned out he'd gone to Johns Hopkins University and he had a brother that was on the medical faculty at Johns Hopkins. And they had already moved far beyond most other schools, although not the University of Michigan, which preceded them by about 20 years, in requiring a baccalaureate degree, in requiring 4 years of medical education, in requiring a background in science taught in laboratories, and requiring clinical training supervised by physicians and teaching hospitals. That was the paradigm that began to be adopted, recommended by Flexner, what was called the Flexner Report of 1910. And it closed down 2/3 of the existing medical schools in this country, attached the rest of them to universities, and created the world of medicine as we know it today. In his report, he put in a paragraph saying, the next profession that ought to look at itself like this is engineering. It's still admitting students directly from high school. It still pretends that an undergraduate degree is enough, although most of them take 5 years to finish it. And that was a century ago, okay? So what's happened in the meantime? Well, every few years, someone comes out with another proposal to extend engineering education, so it pretty much gets ignored. Not this time. I think that the crescendo is building that there is no way that American engineers can add a multiple of the value added from engineers around the rest of the world with the traditional kind of engineering undergraduate degree. So some kind of postgraduate degree is necessary, but it's going to take more than that. If innovation is really our strength in this country, we have to stress the skills which allow people to synthesize knowledge, not to analyze it like scientists do, to be creative and innovative, to be entrepreneurial, to get knowledge in to serve society, to be capable of adapting rapidly to change and driving change in many cases, to continuing to learn throughout their lives. And so that creates a different kind of a structure. And if I were to put together the pieces of that, what I would suggest is, although recognizing that there will be a lot of different kinds of engineering, some engineers will do R&D, some will do design, some will do management, and so forth. And the education requirements for each of those will be somewhat different. But I think what's going to be necessary is first to broaden out very considerably the undergraduate education experience, perhaps redefine engineering not as a pre-professional program, but in fact as a discipline like physics or chemistry or math or history or economics, without the expectation that based on majoring in that you can become an engineer no more than you can become a historian by majoring in history or an author by majoring in English. That the professional education will occur at least at the master's level, and perhaps beyond that for many students, perhaps in a multiple year program, practice-based, taught by practitioners, similar to law or medicine. So breadth at the undergraduate level, fewer specializations, perhaps less in the way of actual required technical courses, more opportunity to broaden your education, what I guess we would call a liberal education in some sense. At the graduate level, more practice-based. I hate to say it, but most of the faculty that teach you in our engineering schools today are not engineers. They're engineering scientists. Their forte is research. They have very little experience in practice. And in the same way that you probably wouldn't want to learn surgery for someone that did microbiology, you probably want to learn surgery from a surgeon that actually operates on a lot of patients. You probably want to learn the profession of engineering from a practicing engineer, albeit very distinguished. And so I think that we will see more and more of what are called professors of practice on faculties of engineering schools. Some engineering schools like MIT and Stanford have already gone a long way toward this. In fact, half of the faculty I met with last Friday at MIT were professors of practice. Highly distinguished engineers. One invented the principal satellite system that powers your cell phone today. The difficulty we have is while Flexner had Johns Hopkins University as a model he could point to for how to increase the educational requirements for medicine, we really don't have that model in the United States today. We're going to have to invent it. And whether that's invented within engineering schools, whether someone comes along like the National Academy of Engineering, the professions, and say, let's get together a group of practitioners and some engineering educators and see what we can put together. Whether it's done like the experiment of Olin College, which was created because a very visionary foundation decided to give them $500 million to create a new engineering school from scratch. Well, they created one at the undergraduate level, but maybe we can find a foundation that would fund creating one at the graduate level. Flexner, after he wrote his report, actually was close to people like Andrew Carnegie and Rockefeller, and was able to put together what today would have been about $6 billion to actually create a number of these new medical schools. Maybe something like that's necessary. And the final thing I'd say is we're, again, not alone. In Europe, a number of years ago, they launched what's called the Bologna process to essentially standardize higher education across Europe. It uses what's called the 3+2+2 program. That is, to standardize an undergraduate degree at 3 years, and in Europe they take one more year of secondary school, so they don't have general education. In other words, European universities do not attempt to socialize young people like we do in the United States. They expect they come in as adults.